I'm Jane Akins, the City of Northport's Community Engagement Coordinator. This is the second episode of our new podcast, Voices of Northport. In this series, we aim to preserve the living histories that shaped our history's identity by creating an audio archive through the voices who lived it. This week's guest is Julie Bellia, Assistant City Manager and longtime employee of the City of Northport. Hi, Julie. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
So when did you move to Northport?
We moved here in 1969.
Wow, so a very long time. And what brought you here initially?
My parents wanted to move here. They both worked for General Development Corporation up in Chicago, Illinois, and they had an opportunity to work down here in Florida. So that's
great.
where we moved.
And what was Northport like when you first arrived?
It was very small. About 2,500 people lived here. And it was a 2-lane road through the city of Northport, one grocery store, one drugstore. That was it.
So a little different than it is today.
Just a little.
And how long have you worked for the City of Northport?
I started working for the city in 1980.
So is that 42 years?
It'll be 44 this month.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So that's quite a journey. Can you share any memories or memorable moments from your 42 years working here?
Yes, it's been a very interesting journey. It's been wonderful to see the city grow and to be raised here in the city and watch it get so large with not just people but development. And the one thing that has always been maintained is a sense of community. And all the events that we have here at the city for the holidays and even here at City Hall, even though we're getting larger in population and growth of buildings, that's always still been maintained. So that part, I think, is very nice attribute for a city.
And so you're the Assistant City Manager of Northport. Yes. And can you tell us a little bit about your background or your career path of how you got into that position?
Well, I started out as a clerk typist working for the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. And there was 3 people. It was the Planning and Zoning and Building Department back then. And there was myself, 2 administrative workers in the building department, and a building official, and that was it. So from there, we grew, and back then, we didn't have department heads, professionals. The commissioners were the department heads.
Oh, wow.
And at that point in time, it was a mayor-commission form of government. So we worked directly for commissioners. But from there, I had several different jobs. I eventually became a planner. I did code enforcement along the way. Our department was combined with Public Works at the time. And then after that, I started working for Public Works, and I eventually worked my way up to Public Works Director. Then for a while, I was interim assistant city manager for a short period of time, and then after that, I was appointed assistant city manager.
That's great. So you've worked all around the city.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And are there any upcoming projects or plans that you're excited about coming to Northport now that you've seen it grow?
The one thing I'm really excited about that I think is going to really help the city take off with regard to some of its commercial development is the water and sewer extensions on Sumter and Toledo Bay Boulevard. I think that is really going to help our city. Of course, finally getting 2 hospitals here in the city is also wonderful. But then eventually getting a 3rd interchange on the east end of the city, either at Raintree or Yorkshire, I think is really going to also help us because that's where our next growth spurt is going to be taking us. We're going to start expanding out east, and it's very important we have that interchange out there. So I think it's all kind of come together.
Great. Do you have a favorite longtime local business or restaurant or park?
Well, the one restaurant, it was a very tiny, small restaurant. It was called Little Italy. That was in our first Northport shopping center. And of course, they've since moved on, but that was one of my favorites many years ago when I first started here.
And if they were still here, what dish would you get?
I would get the baked ziti.
Yeah. Sounds delicious. Do you have one of your fondest memories from living in Northport? When you think of Northport, like, what do you think of?
My fondest memory was actually, it's all we had back then, and that was the city pool. that was where everybody would go, all the kids, to have fun. And even though, after 50-something years, it was older and it needed to be replaced. But that was a great childhood memory.
And what is your go-to activity or spot in Northport if you want to relax?
I love to go shopping, so I'd have to say the Cocoa Plum Shopping Center.
Cocoa Plum, that's great. I love to shop as well. So does my 4-year-old. I need to slow his shopping down because he's a little too young to get a job.
Yes.
If you had to give a newcomer coming into Northport one piece of advice, what would you say to them?
I would say it's a great place to raise a family. The city of Northport is really, although it's going to be 65 years old, is still a very young city. There's a lot of opportunities here. It's a very well-manicured city. They care about you here in the city, and I think they have a great school system, great parks system. I think it's a great place to raise a family.
I would have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And what future do you hope or envision for Northport decades ahead? So we're turning 65, we're a young city.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see Northport in the future?
I see Northport with a lot of residents. We're slated to have 250,000 people, but I see that we will have a little bit better ratio of having commercial facilities to help, with all those residents, and hopefully some, light industrial. So I think my hope is that it's well balanced with respect to the land uses. Probably the one story, I tell this story a lot.
Okay.
Is when we got the call that General Development Corporation was in the middle of constructing a road near Little Salt Springs, and they found an artifact. And actually that artifact was an Indian midden, and she was in of course, a casket that was built by the Indians, and she had a stillborn baby on her chest with her arms folded. Yes. So we had to call the state, of course, and they came down, and we had to, of course, pay to have that brought to a facility. They ruled that we could never finish building that roadway.
Wow. Because
that's actually sacred. And we had, at the next commission meeting, it was very, very full. We had the American Indians, many from Florida as far as up to northern Georgia. So they were very concerned about, what had happened, but the city did the right thing, and they made sure they paid to have it relocated to the facility, and the roadway was never completed.
So it may be a young city to us,
yes,
but people have lived here for
yes,
a very long time.
Long time.
Wow. And now is Little Salt Springs still open for visitors?
No, it's it used to be they used to have kids for school that could go through there and different groups, but I don't think they do that anymore. Yeah, there used to be a lot of diving when I first came here. The University of Miami and some others did diving and things like that, exploratory. Same with Wormhole Springs, but they don't do that anymore.
Are there any major residential or commercial developments that stand out in your memory as shaping Northport? Now, your family worked for General Development Corps.
Yes.
So
when I first came here, back then, the first subdivision, if you will, rather than, single-family lots, each individually built upon, was the Jockey Club. So that's the first actual subdivision that was constructed. And then after that, because it's a general development community, then of course was Highland Ridge. But when we started to do, for example, the Bobcat Trail, that area, and Heron Creek, that was pretty exciting because those were both golf course communities. So.
And when you moved here, were we Northport? Were we Northport Charlotte?
When I moved here, the name of the city was Northport Charlotte. And the residents felt like they didn't have their own identity. And simply because the city of Northport is platted kind of similar, very similar to Charlotte County. So, but they changed it. They changed the name. They shortened it to Northport to drop the Charlotte portion.
Is there anything you would like to add about Northport history that I didn't ask that you think it's important for our listeners to know about the history of Northport?
Well, probably one thing is we used to have a lighthouse here in the city. It was on the Myakatchee Creek along US 41. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. A lot of people really liked the lighthouse.
And now, lighthouse, but no boats, right?
Lighthouse, but no boats.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, thank you, Julie, so much for joining us today and sharing your experiences. To our listeners, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Voices of Northport. I'm excited to continue learning from our local Northport experts. So until next time.